In a world of rules and regulations, where the stakes are high and the margins tight, firearms retailers, it's your dedication to keep it straight and keep it right. From background checks to forms complete, every step ensures we meet the standards set to keep us safe. Compliance isn't just a race. Welcome to the Compliance Corner, where we stay informed and true, navigating the rules together to keep our freedom shining through. It's the Compliance Corner for every retailer and their crew. Staying sharp, staying legal, we know what we need to do. ATF is watching, they're on our side, helping us ensure we abide by the laws that govern.
Hey guys, welcome to Compliance Corner.
What's up, Joel?
Yeah, Tony's been kind of sloughing off lately. And as you can probably tell, we have another face on Compliance Corner, Andrew Graham. He's the founder of Graham Industry Advisors, and he is going to bringing a wealth of knowledge in regards to compliance. And I'm going to just kind of quietly back out and listen to the conversation between Tony, who is our compliance manager, and Andrew Graham, who, by the way, if you hear me call him Andy, he gave me permission today. So I think we're all good there. So guys, I'm gonna minimize myself. And then if I have a question or anything, I'm just going to pop back in. So please don't look at your screen too closely, because when it pops in, it's kind of scary. I know, right, I'm not that good of a looking guy. So carry it away, Tony.
Yeah. So everybody might be asking the question, Compliance Corner, why is there someone else? We're usually talking to Tony, but I've said this over and over again. I don't think the FFL game is a one-man sport. It's not a do-it-yourself and know everything. It's impossible to keep track and remember everything all the time, as much as you're reading and everything else. And the same thing, you can't make it up. And I said, when people ask me for advice and I'm giving it 100%, I'm stealing from this person, that person, talking to this person, that 100%. I'm not making this up as I go, and I'm not making up my own rules. It's all coming from somewhere. And through my adventures from FFL retailing and everything else, Andy has been one of those guys the last few years who has been a source for me to reach out to get help from. He helped establish some policies and procedures with an FFL I was working for previously, and he's been a great source of that. But for his actual background, because he, in the not so distant past, came away from the dark side, came into the light. So I'll let Andy describe his background to you all.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Tony, Joel, good to see you. Thank you for that gentle introduction. It is bright. Folks, don't know how many of you are on there, but I did just retire from ATF in December 2022. I served the Bureau for 37 years. I was a field investigator for about 14, and prior to my retirement in 2022, I was the Deputy Assistant Director over ATF's Enforcement Programs and Service Division. That's a department that is in charge of tracing, in charge at the NFA branch. And while I was there, I want to say I was instrumental in getting the e-forms for all of the NFA, especially the Form 4s, uploaded and working to a very high degree back in December 2021, just before SHOT Show. Also over the licensing center, I was a deputy over that. Prior to that, in 2014, Director B. Todd Jones recruited me into the senior executive ranks back to DC to head up ATF's inspection directorate. So I served about 7 years as the deputy assistant director over all of ATF's 25 field divisions and their various inspection programs. Yes, to include revocations and working with the administrative action policies. Obviously, after 37 years, I didn't expect to think about retiring, but it did come about. And a lot of it was influenced by the administration politics at the time. I like to keep the two separate, but when I see them converging for the wrong reasons, it really didn't sit well. So that sort of helped me sunset my illustrious career. I take a lot of pride in being a public servant, which I believe I did a good job. Nobody ever sued me too much. But, after retiring, you've got all of these rules and regulations, and I've always been a compliance guy. Started up my company, Graham Industry Advisors, to where I'm still consulting both for firearms and explosives. And what was really interesting is last year, year and a half ago, I started consulting for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, Tony. And I mentioned this to you earlier. Last year, I got an invitation from the Senate subcommittee, and I was really surprised. Senator Jim Jordan's office provided an invitation to testify on the Hill. And I was happy to do that, really, because the topic of conversation was weaponizing the government. And I did speak on behalf of the Biden administration and its zero tolerance policies and the really aggressive administrative action policy, but which really had hammered FFLs.
You were speaking out against the no tolerance policy and how it was being applied.
Absolutely. Where it wasn't fair, it wasn't judiciously being applied, and it was at the behest of an administration that really had it in for federal firearm licensees and anti-gun. So I made my opinion known, and the chairman appreciated it. So I've continued to stay in that realm and really connecting with legal firms, FFLs. Just my whole plight here is ATF's got a job to do, and the laws and the statutes are there. How do you manipulate through that stuff? And I do believe in 37 years, I know the who's within the agency. With the change over to the Trump administration, you are going to see some changes. And their wings have been clipped. A lot of things have been put on hold because of the new attorney general. I worked from Eric Holder. There were Merrick Garland. I've always been one. Okay, here's my lane. Here's my job. Here's what's lawful. Here's what's unlawful. Don't push me either way, because I'm going to do what's right every single time. Yep. And right now, the agency is under a magnifying glass, and they have to respond to AG Bondi and to this White House on their policies, on their rulings, and how they administer and how they're serving industry. And a lot of times it gets lost.
Right.
That the regulators there still, as a public servant, you straighten things out. You help gun dealers out. You help manufacturers out, pawnbrokers. It's not, you find a violation and you slam them. So I'm continuing to do that post ATF, and dark side, bright side, more reflecting. It's a whole different perspective.
Yeah, I think I've always said there's people have asked me about what I think about the ATF and what they do, and I've always said there's two different pieces to the ATF. There's the boots on the ground people who I think are legitimately out there, the majority of them trying to do things right and trying to do the job the right way and do a tough job the way it's been given to them. And then there's the political part of it that seeps in and everything else, and you got to be able to separate it too, because I know a lot of SAs and a lot of IOIs in the field who are good people, and they legitimately are trying to help you out and everything. So we see that a lot, and understand there is some differences there. It's like, don't sum up what's going on politically with the guys on the ground. Not that they're saying there might not be some out there kind of spouting the wrong stuff, making their own stuff, doing there might be IOIs enforcing their own personal code of IOI regulation and stuff like that. But that aside, those individual cases aside, again, I don't know if I'd want to have their job to say.
It's a thankless job, I'll be honest with you. When I was in the field, I started out in Nashville, Tennessee, and worked Alabama, worked Mississippi, and all that stuff. First level supervisor, taught at the academy. It comes down to the individual, and ironically, you've got 25 field divisions, you've got about 805 field IOIs, and I guarantee you, and this is something I strive for when I was their boss's boss, is you speak the same language, you enforce the same code, don't come up with your personal opinions. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think a lot of FFLs are disserviced, or they are the point of disservice is they'll give you their opinion, this is what I think, and you'll get another IOI that'll walk in there the following year and say, hey, wait a minute, you shouldn't be doing this. This is entirely contrary to what the CFR says. So that level of inconsistency leaves an FFL scratching the head and thinking, what the hell do I do actually? Which is not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. So anybody watching, if you're ever in a chat or a support chat with me and I'm just saying, hey, there's some questions about what he's doing, I have concerns, call this phone number, and I'm giving you somebody's phone number, that's going to be people like Andy, and I'm telling you to call them to get some better advice on how to deal with them and direct. So if I'm giving you those numbers, 100% follow up. I'm telling you, because if I'm seeing the concern, you may need it, and you may need the help.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a little bit about current events, Andy, and what's going on. We know the states are always in turmoil, and state stuff may not have been your forte, but let's look at like Colorado. There's some crazy stuff in Colorado. 6.5% excise tax, HB 24 1356 that went effect 1346 went effect April 1. That's 6.5% excise tax, firearms, ammunition, firearms precursor parts. July 1, they have a HB 241353. It's a state licensing for firearms dealers going into effect. And then they have SB 25003. This is that semi-automatic weapon ban that's, I believe, right now headed to the governor's office right now for signature. And I doubt he's not going to sign it based on how things look, unless he gets some serious pressure. Oregon, we're seeing similar. There was a court case for Measure 114. I believe that was a permit to purchase and a magazine ban extension. They've also got a Senate bill going through that's adding additional age restrictions. So it looks like that stuff's going to be taking effect. New Mexico was following Colorado in suit with SB 279, semi-automatic ban. Although it looks like, I think last I heard, there was an update that I think maybe some of the representatives got enough pressure from the populace and have stalled that in the process. So maybe, hopefully, that's dying away. Although also scary out of New Mexico is SB 318. They're looking at what they're calling an Unfair Trade Practices Act. So this is kind of would open up liability, potential liabilities to firearms manufacturers and dealers. So that's on the scary side. Even out in your neck of the woods, Virginia, there was, I think, 4 bills that went through. Again, age restrictions, waiting periods, semi-auto ban, and again, the civil liability, something focusing on that civil liability aspect. And I think Governor Youngkin vetoed them all, which is good.
Okay.
But it's interesting. It's a trend. I think we knew a while back that if they couldn't get anti-gun legislation through federal, I think we knew the battleground state, the battle was going to occur to the states, and I think we're seeing a lot of that. What do you think?
No, that's a very true statement. Where you've got the Gun Control Act, the CFR under the feds, and where the states are concerned. Now, one thing I would remind FFLs is, you may live in a red state or a blue state. I'm just not getting political, but unfortunately, that's our reality. And the state does have a right to create their own laws. And a lot of those states are still clinging to some of the former administration's guidance and nuances. And there's nothing that from a federal perspective that you can do to prevent that. All that means is if a state legislation is passed and approved and it becomes a bill, then guess what? You're an FFL in that state. You got to play by those rules. I'm from Colorado. I was a DIO and area supervisor in Colorado, and it's kind of saddens me to see the extreme that Colorado is slipping back to. It wasn't like that 20 years ago.
No,
and which is unfortunate. And that's where I think a lot of FFLs need to be tuning in as to, can I send this 10-round magazine with this pistol? You've got a lot of states that have restrictive sales requirements. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, if a state does that, it has little to no impact on what ATF does during their inspections. One thing I want to remind everybody is that ATF can't cite you, nor can they fine you for a state violation. All they can do is make a referral to the enforcement office of that state, and they're the ones who can come back in and levy a fine. They can't revoke your license, but they can revoke any state privileges that they enact or they make a requirement. This is really new to me when I heard that Colorado was looking to create something which is comparable to a federal firearm license, which is issued by ATF. I know the way when I was there, I helped them write their explosive laws, and they follow the Part 555 pattern under explosives, and a lot of their, I guess, pawnbroker requirements, they patterned after the Code of Federal Regulations, specifically the regulations covering dealer operations. So this doesn't surprise me that there's some states, and like I said, you divide the states, whether you're a battleground state or you're a blue state, they're going to try to push the envelope as well. Mm-hmm. And it's just a matter of an FFL knowing what their liability is.
Yeah.
What's at stake for me, and just knowing what the hell to do and stick to doing it the right way. Because, regardless of the administration, under the Biden administration, licensing requirements were the same, background check requirements were the same, age restrictions were the same, exemptions to NICS, they were all the same. That hasn't changed under President Trump. So what has sort of dialed down a little bit is ATF's enforcement. I believe for the first 55 days or so, they were really barred from doing any administrative actions. Yeah. And those are going through revocation. So the two aren't tandem, but the two have to coexist. The federal law is not going to go away. Neither is the state. The state might be able to be dialed down, but as far as the GC is concerned, it's going to be an act of Congress.
Yeah.
Do that.
And then, so that brings about the kind of the topic, the executive order. I know Pam Bondi asked for extension on that to review ATF rules and everything. And then within that time frame, there's also been a Supreme Court ruling that upheld that initial facial challenge to the frame and receiver rule when dealing with those kits and stuff like that. Do you still see that coming as a major shakeup, or do you see anything really in our world of FFL changing coming up with that? And I know that's kind of a really broad stroke, and I know there's things you can and can't talk about at this point, but
what I can say about this, let's just be careful about the kits. And that's something that not only the former DOJ, but the current DOJ is defining. Okay, how easily are they assembling? So when you look at frame receiver, it's the lower portion or the upper portion, whichever houses the firing mechanism, your charger or your trigger mechanism. That is your receiver. So when you look at these, and I'll say the word poly 80, a poly 80 is just what it is. It's a partial firearm. Absent a barrel or the slide or the barrel spring, it's an incomplete firearm. So I believe what they were deliberating over were the kits where everything was in the box, including a barrel and a slide. So where that's concerned, being readily assemblable, whether you don't have to drill any holes or you punch anything out, and you put in the retainer pins and you put in your inserts and your chassis, within a matter of minutes. And I went on YouTube just to look to see, are these things really that easy to assemble? So I see that bill has some teeth to it. It's going to be contested. There are going to be motions to stay it. Well, that plays out in the courts. I know the agency is going to be silent on it. You've got other advocacy groups that'll be pushing it just to see if SCOTUS's ruling stays.
Yeah,
it's going to be challenged. But when coming back to an FFL, basically, your responsibility is if it's got a serial number on it and it looks like this, that you can pull it with one hand, it's a pistol or a revolver, and there's certain responsibilities that come along with that as an FFL. So do those checks, keep those records, because the minute you don't, you'll have that unexpected inspection. Oh, it's ATF. Oh, it's time to inspect, and you're kind of caught holding the bag, and it may not end up well.
Yep. Yeah, or like I tell people, it's just maybe the PMF side of it's not the part of the business to get into. Let that maybe it's just not worth it.
That's pretty confusing, because you and I, we can go and buy your polymer lowers, buy a chassis separately, because ATF nor does the Gun Control Act regulate parts. We can make it for ourselves, and I can keep it in home protection and target practicing all day long. But the minute you trade it into a pawn shop or you go into a gun shop, that's when all of the rules apply.
Yep.
Then you've got to have the markings on it just for traceability purposes.
Yep. So a little shift of gears. I think most of us were a little surprised to hear Kash Patel when he was announced as the acting director of the ATF on top of director of the
Being the
FBI.
FBI director, I know.
What I mean, is that writing on the wall? Is that foretelling of something coming up? Where do you think that's leading?
First of all, I was surprised that he's wearing dual hats. That's unheard of. Absolutely. Like the FBI aren't a beast in themselves. You've got another agency that's still law enforcement that you're presiding over. So I'd say figuratively he's been placed there, but they've got a guy there named Marvin Richardson, who is the deputy, who's
been there a long time.
He's been on as almost as long as, well, he's outstayed me now since I retired in 22. He started a year before I did back in 86. I started, I believe, in 87. So where Kash Patel, Director Patel, does have his pulse on what ATF is doing. I hope he gets the proper guidance on where the industry operations or the regulatory side of ATF is concerned. So ATF's the only agency that's got a law enforcement and criminal and regulatory enforcement duty to do. So I do see changes coming. I've heard rumors about a lot of people jumping ship. I've heard about cutbacks. ATF wasn't immune to President Trump's invitation to resign early. I know quite a few did, and quite a few didn't want to return. So agents and IOIs, they never got the privilege of working from home other than extenuating circumstances. We got snow and COVID. You couldn't go out. You couldn't go anywhere. But a lot of the administrative folks of ATF that were assigned external duties, those are the folks that aren't coming back. But I do see changes with the agency. I do see changes in perhaps being consolidated into another bureau or another department of DOJ, but that's just speculative on my part. As far as changing how they do their jobs and executing their inspections, I can see definitely the administrative action policy getting modded, and my fair weather dream would be is to revert back to the policy that I helped write back in 2016 through 2019, I believe it was, to where, if there wasn't a nexus to criminal activity and you could have the evidence and you can discern between a paperwork error, and I forgot to write the date, as opposed to wink, wink, I knew that guy was a straw purchaser and I deliberately did that, and giving opportunities, and especially diverting the authority back to the effective field division, to where the director of industry operations can work with the federal licensee at hearings to listen to them. By not allowing ATF to conduct an inspection, by refusing that, well, you know what? If my wife is having open heart surgery in the hospital and ATF knocked on my door, I'll tell them, beat it. I'll see you whenever. So there are extenuating circumstances that with this new policy, FFLs didn't really have an opportunity to dial it back and to explain their side of everything. So
I think even the IOI's hands got tied a lot in terms of inputting data into a program and it spitting out a result too, right? Am I incorrect on that?
Could you clarify what kind of data? I know exactly what you're talking about, Tony. Well, they had a standard that they had to meet. Right. And they had little to no room to deviate from the standards.
Right.
So if you accidentally lost your 4473, you misplaced it with the approved NTN number from the FBI, from your POC, that was an automatic revocation. That was an automatic accusation that you sold a firearm off the books and you failed to conduct the required background check. So those are things like that need to get reestablished.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think kind of the climate pre no tolerance was they identify those things. They're making judgment calls. We know you're not trying to do bad business. You're making some mistakes. So now let's help you fix those mistakes. And it seemed during no tolerance, it was, you're just making mistakes. So here's the ramifications. And it kind of.
Absolutely. They were very robotic about applying the rules and really didn't administer. And that's really what I complained about when my opinion of being weaponized, it was you're taking away the opportunity of a defense. It was all offensive. It was accusatory. And through that whole process, you weren't given the opportunity. Well, you were given an opportunity to go and defend yourself at a hearing, but it's expensive at a huge cost. So I hope to see this new administration, and I hope to see Kash Patel's influence, and I hope to see ATF's light bulbs go off to where they retract a lot of the former things. I can tell you right now, the field divisions, they really aren't changing a whole hell of a lot right now. They're still going, full ahead of steam on doing their inspections.
Yep.
But what they got clipped on is you can't do any revocations in the interim. That doesn't say it's not going to happen. I mean, selling a gun off books, selling a gun knowing that I'm selling it to a convicted felon, or failing to keep the required records, those are never going to go away. Those are standard violations that in any climate, if they're willful, and that's something that they need to readdress. How are they defining willfulness? Yeah. And how does that apply in those specific cases? So there are a lot of items that I think should be revisited and reapplied using the older method as opposed to this.
And we are going to actually talk more about this on April 10th, correct? I believe that's the date. If I remember right. We actually, Joel, if you're still around or if you have any questions, we've probably been boring you with our chatter. But
what do you mean
April
10th
still
around?
There he is.
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat here.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. It's April 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth on how to prepare for one of those checks or audits, correct?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Correct. And then again, that's why for me, Andy's insight is so invaluable because he's going to give us some direction from the mindset of the side we don't always see of the mindset and the direction of those inspectors coming in, so we can understand what was the old Sun Tzu thing, understand your enemy, something like that. Yeah. Right. But 100%. That's why, Andy, I think you're valuable. Like I said, you've always been a great resource to me. And again, I think that insight coming in, helping dealers and FFL holders understand what that direction is that coming in and what they're looking for and what they may be thinking and how they may be analyzing things, I think will help out a lot for people to keep things straight.
Just to be prepared. This shouldn't be a surprise. There's a lot that licensees can do to remain at a very high level of preparedness. So whenever it is that ATF walks in, they're never going to walk in cold turkey. They know everything that's happened at your premise at least 1 year prior, including who your suppliers are and how many guns you should technically have. Yeah. And this is all based on information that FFLs submit, like on your multiple handgun sales, on your license renewals. You declare, over a course of X number of years, these how many firearms. So they're not walking in the cold turkey. They know how many firearms you have, how many transactions you've had, how many FFL sales, how many non-licensee sales you've done. So it's just a matter of keeping our house in order the day of. And you build up to that level of order, and it's a gradual process. It doesn't happen overnight. And once you get those good habits built up, you just remain immune from getting cited. You remain immune from getting violated.
So again, April 10th, fill in. We'll go through a lot more details, a lot more information, opportunity to ask questions, and we'll certainly have those discussions as they come up. Certainly looking forward to that. I think that'll be a good time.
And I'm just going to say the situational questions during the presentation, man, bring it on. If it hits home, ping it out there. We can try to get it addressed for you and try to get you insulated.
Yeah, perfect opportunity for you guys to come and pepper us with questions, pepper Andy with questions, and get those answers that you need. So it sounds like you're wrapping everything up, Tony. I
think so. I think
not quick,
I think,
but I'm kind of picking up some vibes that like Tony's done.
Well, we don't want to tie people up too long, and again, like I said, we'll go into more depth and for Wednesday. We don't want to spoil all the information we have to give out on the 10th. So I'm sure we could talk for hours.
Are out there.
So there you go, guys. April 10th, 1 p.m. Eastern. I think this is going to be a series, correct, Tony?
Yeah, I think we're setting up to do a couple sessions with Andy. This is where we wanted to start, and we got some ideas for a second session with Andy, and maybe we'll tailor that based on questions we get during the first one. We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see how that goes.
That's going to be perfect. So, guys, please join us. Don't forget, if you miss this live broadcast, make sure you go to YouTube and hit the bell for notifications so that you're notified when we go live. Do the same thing on X. In your settings, I have no idea how to get there. I just know that I'm always notified like 3 or 4 different times when we go live. All my devices start lighting up, which is very convenient because you never can tell when we're going to be throwing something out like we did today. So with that, we've got to end like we always do, Tony. And Andrew, I'm going to need something from you as well. So let's start with Andy. I'm sorry for calling you by your formal name there. Andy, do you have any parting words? Do you have any words of wisdom? Or like Grand Thumb says, do you have any dad advice?
Dad advice. Well, to everyone out there, stay strong, stay positive. You jump through a bunch of hoops to get your license, and it's easy to keep. You just need to activate what you know to activate. Stay strong.
So Andy kept it business, which is perfect because that's really good advice. Tony, are you going to keep it business, or are you just going to go off the reservation?
I'm probably going to go off the reservations. I'm just going to say it. Be strong, be positive, be humble, but always be the hardest hitter on your team.
There you go. Just be kind to people, guys. Just be grown-ups. Treat everybody like exactly the way you would want to be treated. So I think that's good. With that, we are out of here, guys. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everybody.
It's the Compliance Corner.